what if one of the biggest risks to your financial future isn't losing money in the stock market? What if it's being so afraid of losing money that you never give your money a chance to grow? Think about it. You work hard, you save, you avoid unnecessary risk, you keep money in the bank because you want to feel secure. And honestly, those can be smart financial decisions. But there's a point where being cautious stops protecting your future and starts limiting it. That is what I call the financial comfort trap. And today we're going to talk about how to recognize it and when playing safe actually makes sense and how to take calculated financial risk without turning your money into a casino. Because here we don't just ask, can I afford it? We ask, is it worth my time or money? Welcome back. One thing I've learned from investing is that building wealth isn't simply about finding the perfect investment. A huge part of it is understanding your own behavior because you can have a good income, a solid savings account, and access to excellent investments information, and still make decisions that quietly work against your long term goals. And one of those decisions is holding on too much comfort. And I'm not talking about having an emergency fund. I'm not talking about keeping cash for a home purchase next year. I'm talking about money that has no specific short term purpose but stays on the sideline simply because investing feels uncomfortable. That's an important distinction. What happens when we confuse what feels safe today with what creates financial security over the long term? Imagine you have $100,000 sitting in cash. You look at your account and think, great, I'm protected. And emotionally, that feels very good. But you don't have to worry about a market crash affecting that money tomorrow. But now ask another question. What if the job of this $100,000? If it's your emergency fund, upcoming down payment, taxes, or money you'll need soon, keeping it liquid may make perfect sense. But if you don't need that money for years and you're holding it entirely because you are afraid of investing, then there's another risk you're not looking at: opportunity cost. A recent 2026 commentary from major investment firms has highlighted this exact issue. Excess cash can have a meaningful long term opportunity cost, especially when investors wait for the perfect market entry that may never arrive. So the question isn't, is cash safe? Of course, cash has important role. The better question is, how much cash do I actually need for safety, and how much am I holding because I'm afraid? That is a different question. So why our brains love safety? This is why psychologists come in. Investing is uncomfortable because losses feels different from gains. Behavioral finance calls this loss aversion. We are often more emotionally affected by losing money than we are excited gaining the same amount. And that can lead to decisions that feel perfectly rational in the moment. For example, I'll invest when the market settles down. I'll wait for the correction. I'll invest when interest rate becomes clearer. I'll wait until I understand the economy better. Does that sound familiar? The problem is that there is always another reason to wait. And the market doesn't send you any invitation saying, okay, so uncertainty is over. You can invest now. That's not how markets work. Recent behavior finance research and commentary continues to highlight how loss aversions and overly conservative behavior can cause investors to hold excess cash or delay appreciation. So sometimes what sounds like financial responsibility is actually fear disguised as responsibility. And that's something worth examining in ourselves. Then here's the part I want you to remember. Doing nothing is also a financial decision. People often ask, what happens if the market crashes after I invest? That's a legitimate question, but I also ask, what happens if I don't invest for the next 5 or 10 years? Because the consequences of inactions are less visible. You don't receive a notification saying, you just missed 5 years of potential compounding. There's no dramatic red numbers on your phone. You simply wake up years later and realize your money didn't grow as much as it could have. And this is why I think opportunity cost is one of the most overlooked concepts in personal finance. We are very good at calculating what something costs. We are not always good at calculating what we gave up by not doing something. Absolutely. And this is where I want to be very, very clear. I'm not saying put all your money into the stock market. That's not responsible investing. Cash has a purpose. An emergency fund can protect you from the selling investments at the wrong time. Short-term goals require liquidity. If you're going to need money soon, market volatility can become a serious problem. And your personal situations matters. Your age, income stability, debt, goals, time horizon, and risk tolerance all matter. So I don't believe in asking, should I have cash or investment? I think the better question is, what is each dollar supposed to do? Give your money a job. Some dollars are for emergencies, some are for short term goals, some are for long term growth. That's much more intentional than simply saying, I want everything to feel safe. This is one of the biggest mindset shifts I want you to take away. Safety and security are not always the same thing. Safety can mean I don't want this money to fluctuate. Security can mean I want to have enough purchasing power and assets to support my future. Those goals can sometimes conflict. For example, keeping money completely outside investments may reduce short term volatility. But over a long enough period, inflation and misgrowth can reduce your purchasing power. That's why long term wealth building generally requires more exposure to assets with growth potential, matched to your goals and risk tolerance. The key isn't eliminating risk, it's managing risk intentionally. You don't need to become aggressive, you need to become deliberate. 5 ways to escape the comfort trap. Okay, I'm gonna share it for you. So, how do you actually do that? Here are 5 strategies. Number one, separate emergency cash from investment cash. Decide what amount you genuinely need for emergencies and near-term obligation. Don't let your entire financial life to become one giant emergency fund. Number two, give every dollar a purpose. Ask, is this money for spending, safety, or growth? If you can't answer that, you may need to rethink where it's sitting. Number 3, stop waiting for the perfect certainty. You are probably never going to feel 100% comfortable before making an investment decision. Instead, create a strategy you can stick with through uncertainty. For some investors, that might mean systematic contributions rather than trying to predict the perfect entry point. The goal is to reduce the role of emotion. Number 4, measure your risk in years, not headlines. A market headline can make you panic today, but if your investment horizon is 10 or 20 years, may have a very different meaning. So don't let a one-day story make a 10 years decision for you. Number 5, ask what happens if you do nothing. This is my favorite. Before every major financial decision, ask 2 questions. What could I lose if I act? Then, what could I lose if I don't? That second question can completely change your perspective. The goal isn't to become fearless. I don't think successful investors are people who never feel fear. They're people who learn how to make decisions despite uncertainty. That's a huge difference between reckless risk and calculated risk. Reckless risk says, I don't care what happens. Calculated risk says, I understand the downside, I have a plan, I'm willing to accept reasonable uncertainty for a potential long-term benefit. That's the mindset I want you to develop. Because financial freedom isn't about making every decision feel comfortable. Sometimes it's about becoming comfortable with the right amount of discomfort. So here's the questions I want you to live with. Are you protecting your money or protecting yourself from discomfort of making a decision? Those aren't always the same thing. Cash has a purpose, safety has a purpose. But if your money is sitting idle simply because growth feels uncomfortable, it's worth taking a second look. Because sometimes the biggest financial risk isn't losing money, it's staying too comfortable for too long. And remember, here at these channels, we don't ask, is it worth your money? We also ask, is it worth your time? And if this video gave you something to think about, subscribe for more content about investing, money psychology, intentional wealth, and making smarter decisions with both your times and your money. And tell me in the comments, what's one financial decision you've been delaying because it feels uncomfortable? I'll see you in the next one.